Okay, so a good friend of mine who's a foodie mentioned his friend Amy Ephron to me a few years ago, and her online magazine, One for the Table. And then, shortly thereafter, Lorraine Newman read here, and like 2 weeks after that, she had an article in One for the that was published on there, and we were out for lunch, and so I've been chasing Amy ever since. Chasing Amy! And I have been, and I kind of had her last spring, and then she got busy, and then we had her last month, and she had to go on a cruise for the New York Times. But we got her now when her book just became an LA Times bestseller. Okay. All right. Amy is a best-selling and award-winning novelist. Her national bestseller, A Cup of Tea, spent 37 weeks on the LA Times bestseller list and has been bought by film producer Jerry Bruckheimer. A Cup of Tea won Ephron the 2005 Southern California Booksellers Association Award for Fiction. It received the Booklist Best Fiction of the Year for 2005 award and was a Barnes & Noble Book Club selection. Her most recent book, Loose Diamonds and Other Things I've Lost and Found Along the Way, is a current LA Times bestseller. Yay. That's right. She writes a monthly column, LA POV, for the New York Times online, which she has to leave to go to because New York is underwater and she's got to go hold up, I don't know what. But anyway, she does. But she's written for Harper's Bazaar, The Daily Beast, House Beautiful, The Los Angeles Times, Huffington Post, as well as her own One for the Table, and various other print and online publications. She recently directed a short film, Chloe at 3 a.m., which was featured by the American Cinematheque at the American Cinematheque at the Women's Directors Festival in January 2011. It's taken a long time to get her here, but some things are worth waiting for. Ladies, please welcome Amy. You know, I felt up Jackie Collins when she was here when I was putting her. I said she let me feel my breasts. Were they fake? Were they fake? They were, and they were spectacular.
Really? I don't know what to say. I think one of the things about Vicki is that she breaks all the rules. And not only does she break them, she doesn't believe in them. And that's the key to everything right now, because we're in an incredibly changing landscape every minute of the day. And if anyone says to you, you can't get married after 30 and you can't get a job after 42, you have to not believe them. Because part of what's going on right now is some weird reinvention and nobody knows where it's gonna land. And I have to also say that for a lot of us, I don't know how Alan Zweibel is today. He hasn't responded to my email. As you know, he's in New Jersey. Yeah. I saw his town fly by on the television this morning, and we've got a lot of friends and family who we think are okay. I know my immediate family is, but we're all under a little, and the reason I have to leave is because I have an interesting little opportunity here to bash Romney.
Go in good health.
I'm actually going home so that I can see that for many, many years of my life, and for Tracy's, I have driven past what I think of as an LA monument, which is our little Chrysler building, visible from so many angles, which is the Mormon temple up on the hill. That is like a secret fortress and no one is allowed. Well, interestingly, I might add, about 8 months ago, a big sign went up on the lawn that said Visitor Center, all are welcome. I then learned that in 2008, they began to build this visitor center. So I couldn't help it, I drove in. I was in mourning at the time, and it was a very interesting time to drive into a temple. And I've been holding this piece back until the week before the election. And with the complications of the storm and the Romney video going around about how we should defund FEMA, it just seemed to me that I probably should prioritize that. So please forgive me if I run out the door, and hopefully I'll get it past the Times. My column isn't usually political. As many of you know, I write about fashion, and occasionally I veer into politics. We'll see.
Can you hear it here first?
No.
Oh, the one you're writing today.
No, they know I'm writing, but that my column is inside the Mormon Visitors Center. They know that. Whereas I call it almost inside the Mormon Temple. But all my thoughts and prayers are with all my friends in New York today, and in New Jersey and Maine and everywhere else where there's a problem. The weird thing about Loose Diamonds is it skitters around life from kind of childhood to later in life. And Lorraine and I, as Tracy also knows, we're best friends in high school. So we go back a really long way. And I also have a really bad habit of losing things. Sometimes I lose people. And then there are people who it's really worth holding on to. We've been burglarized. Our house burned down last year. This book skitters around between that and an afternoon I spent with Squeaky Ephron. It's a very eclectic collection, I have to say. 3 of the pieces were in Vogue, and 1 of them was in the New York Times in print, which I was very happy about. And I also do write for the print side of the Times too. And it's had a really strange little life, this book, but I'm very fond of it. I've never done essays or nonfiction before, and I was really dragged into this by my editor, who did all my fiction books when I published the first pieces. And I'm going to read a really weird piece, because I'm in a really weird mood. No, it's true, I was up most of the night kind of worrying about people. And I actually have a table of contents, which I'm very happy for. So why don't I use it? Good, it's in there. I want to thank Vicki, because this is an extraordinary thing that she puts together, and I don't know how you do it. And I want to thank you for staying on me to get here, because I'm really glad I'm here. And I don't know what it means when your masseuse's back goes out. It just doesn't sound like a good sign, right? Get your masseuse, right? I hope she's okay. I'm going to call her when I go home. This is called Why I Quit Being Psychic. And I have to say that unfortunately most of the things in this story are true. And I also have to confess that I've kind of fallen off the wagon. But when this was written, I had actually quit. Hi. I'm Amy, and I'm psychic. Everyone else in the room responds in unison. Hi, Amy. At least that's what happens in my fantasy and in this room in real life. But there is no organization for recovering psychics, and I don't know if I would want to join it if there were, partly because there would be all those other psychics in the room. And like I said, I'm trying to quit. I don't know when I first knew I was psychic. I think I was born that way. I remember things that happened when I was a child. At first, it didn't seem like it was a problem, but things like that never do. Being psychic isn't like riding a bike. It's something that you have to keep up, that you have to practice. It's something not to let in. And like any addiction, once you open the floodgates, it's difficult to give it up. But everyone has a moment when they hit bottom, when it's all spinning out of control, and you don't think you're going to be able to get it to stop, and it feels scary. I remember when that happened to me. My first husband, Sasha, and I were playing bridge with T-Bone Burnett, and some girl he was dating, whose name I can't remember. I was coming off a big run. I just accurately predicted a burglary and earthquake, and somehow psychically known that my old boyfriend's father had passed away the day before in New Jersey, hadn't spoken to him for years, and had no idea his father was even ill. And I guess I was talking about it, because it had been a sort of over-the-top week, psychically speaking. And T-Bone, who's brilliant and funny, has perfect politics, is unbelievably talented, and is born again, but he's a musician and he's from Texas, so that's to be expected. And he was drinking and smoking, but apparently abstaining from sex without marriage, although I wasn't sure I ever quite believed that, since he and the girl he was dating were actually living together, professed that he didn't believe in psychic phenomena at all. I looked across the table at Sasha, who was my bridge partner, and smiled, and he gave me a small smile back. I don't know if I said it out loud or not, but I looked at T-Bone, and implicit in the look was, watch this. I turned my attention to a key that was upright in a lock on the ledge of the window, next to the table in the breakfast room where we were sitting, and I assumed not turned to the lock position. I stared at it for a moment, and the key flew straight up into the air, out of the lock, off the window ledge, and landed on the bridge table. It was a little scary, but I have to admit, I experienced a certain rush when it happened. Nobody said a word. After a somewhat awkward silence, T-Bone placed the key on the ledge of the window, although not back in the lock, and I very shyly said, "Whose deal is it?" And we resumed playing cards. I'd never done anything like it before, and it was seductive and frightening in the way that something seductive can be frightening. I thought about delving deeper. I had a fantasy that I could go to psychic school, not that I was certain such a thing existed, but I imagined I could apprentice myself to a real psychic and actually learn how to do it. But I also felt that if I did, there might be no turning back. The next day I was driving on the freeway, and a midnight blue Mercedes pulled up next to me. The driver turned and looked at me. He was terribly attractive, Russian and Nordic, with dark blonde hair, high cheekbones, and piercing eyes. And he stared at me intently. And even though we were both driving on the freeway at close to 80 miles an hour, he didn't seem to watch the road. And then he turned his eyes back to the road and sped up as if beckoning me to follow him. As he pulled ahead of me, I saw that his vanity license plate read Psychic 1. I thought about following him, but realized I had no idea where I was going or if anyone would ever see me again. It scared me, and that was when I quit. I've been straight down for almost 16 years. I've had a couple of slips. It wasn't my fault. I know people always say that, but it wasn't. I woke up one morning, had a premonition a stock my children owned was going to drop after it had a 700% increase over the last 3 years. No idea what prompted that thought, but I called the broker at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and almost robotically asked him to sell. By 10 the next morning, the stock had dropped from 57 to 23. He did call me back that afternoon and asked if by chance I'd spoken to anyone at the company. Since it was truly odd, I hadn't. People who don't believe in psychic phenomena always think there's a logical explanation for an occurrence. But I can't quite believe that my selling the small amount of stock my children owned had prompted a run on the stock. Just saying. It was a psychic moment, and it paid for a couple of years of tuition. On that one, I have no regrets. A few years later, I sensed a dear friend was thinking about taking her own life. I got in the car and drove to San Francisco and showed up on her doorstep. She credits me with saving her life. Wow. That Christmas, she gave me a diamond necklace, which I never wear since we no longer speak. But I have no regrets on that one either. The third one I don't want to talk about. Everyone has revenge fantasies, but this was a little extreme. Like I said, I don't want to talk about it. Alan, my present husband, doesn't believe in psychic phenomena or coincidence for that matter, but he's a lawyer, so he doesn't think I had anything to do with the thing that happened to the terrible people who live next door. And I don't want to encourage anyone to go down a dangerous path as seductive as it is. Alan's disbelief is part of what helps me stay straight. He's whatever the opposite of an enabler would be, and I'm blessed to have him in my life. And I have to admit, I'm much happier since I quit. I'm less frightened, less anxious, less certain of my own omnipotence, which is always a good thing. The first step to sobriety is recognizing that you have a problem. I'm psychic, and all I can do is take it one day at a time.
Imagine me